we introduced this new series of colloquia with the aim to invite particularly high-level international speakers and to have them here in our intimate atmosphere of IFISC. So you all have the possibility to interact with these people. This will further be fostered by an after meeting that we will usually have upstairs in room 215 with some drinks and nibbles, and where you're further encouraged to bother our dear speakers during this recreational time.
Not today, we'll be here. Today we'll be here.
Today we'll be here?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Usually we'll be upstairs. Today we will exceptionally be here. So certainly it's the greatest pleasure and honor having you as our first speaker of the colloquium, and Maxi kindly agreed to introduce.
Thank you. So it's a real pleasure to introduce you our speaker today, Professor Bernardo Huberman. He's a physicist by training. He's the head of the Social Computing Lab and also an associate professor at the University of Alto. He has made a number of essential contributions in a variety of subjects. Here is a partial list. I made a note, and fluctuations in simple chaotic dynamics, theory of intermittency, noise in Josephson junctions, routes to chaos, topological excitations, melting of 2D, vortex lattices, recurrence phenomena in quantum dynamics, evolutionary game theory, and after that, and as early as 1998, 1999, remember 1998, 1999, he already published papers in Science and in Nature on the regularities in the World Wide Web surfing and the growth dynamics of the World Wide Web. And that was back at that time. Among his most recent work, one of very large impact, is on the usage patterns of collaborative tagging systems, and he will tell us about his current research on social media and attention today. He has certainly a very well-established leadership in opening new fields of research which have been followed later by a number of other scientists. I was having dinner the other day with him, and it came out in conversation about the H index. And he said, no idea what is my H index. That's, a strange thing. So I was curious. And I checked. His H index on a first approximation is 45.
Which means what?
Which means 45. Which means 45. I mean, many of us would like to have 45. I should also mention that in February this year, he published a paper in Nature. The title was Big Data Deserve a Bigger Audience. And that has followed a controversy with a paper in New York Times, with an article in New York Times last week about research done with big data, which is not publicly available. And I'm sure that he will make some controversial statements trying to foster some discussions about what's the use of big data and about the end of theory. So Bernardo, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask a show of hands, how many of you were at my lecture yesterday? Okay, that means that you would be totally bored if I repeated myself. I would. So I will try to go very quickly over a couple of little things and then move to a set of topics that hopefully you did not hear about it. And I actually do plan to be rather provocative at one point or the other. As a matter of fact, yesterday Professor San Miguel was very provocative when he said, what have you learned about social science by predicting movies and so on? So I'll tell you a little bit about a different way of looking at all this stuff. But first, so let me start by telling you about what is the issue that I'm really interested in. I've been now for about 4 years focused very seriously on the attention economy. As I said to many of you, it's a huge issue today, especially because of the immense proliferation of attention. The only thing that I like to say, and here it is, the reason for those of you who didn't hear me yesterday, attention is important because it scares. You don't have to get a PhD in economics to know that things that are scarce are valuable. Okay, from love to hatred to speeches and so on. We value that thing that we cannot get. Okay, and so the issue with attention today is because we are absolutely flooded with stuff that is calling our attention. Download me, watch me, buy me, notice me, text me, reply to me, and so on. We are living in a world where getting our attention for a shorter period of time for a massive number of people is a hugely valuable thing. The success of Google's, all the internet contents and TV channels and so on depends on having a lot of people watching, okay, or consuming one way or the other. And as I said yesterday, and I'll repeat it again because I think it's important, wherever attention flows, issues surface. Issues don't surface if people don't pay attention. The social agenda of a country or a community, or you, all of you, discuss things that essentially bubble to the top, and you are starting to pay attention. Okay? And even more interestingly, especially if you work for a company that pays your salary, money often follows. And the reason for that is, as I said yesterday in a rather comical way, perhaps, that almost anything in life except attention can be manufactured or replicated cheaply. As I said, you cannot hire a bunch of Chinese people or Cambodian people to manufacture attention for you very easily. The attention you need, okay? Other kinds of attention you can. So that's really the whole issue. Now, I will start, because this is a difficult audience as opposed to yesterday, by saying something that perhaps is going to be controversial. I gave a colloquium, the physics colloquium at the University of Michigan about 2 years ago, and the front row is usually dominated by particle physicists. They are these sort of people that do fundamental work, and so they were rather upset about what I said. On the other hand, they could not argue with it. So I'm going to show you this. Because there is a particular role that attention plays that is fascinatingly interesting, and unfortunately I have not that many insights into it, which is attention is the coordination mechanism that powers the progress of science. Think about it. You discover something. You need to publish it somewhere. People have to notice it. That's why we have a system of conferences, seminars, publications that focus the attention of our colleagues into some controversial, non-controversial trivial result, and if enough attention goes there, enough people will work on it, develop it further, and eventually publish and so on. Okay. Now, it's interesting that attention, unlike rock music or any other kind of performance art, it has a symmetry component. We seek attention from those who want our attention. You see, if I was a rock performer, I play music. Yes, I like a lot of people to come to my concert and to pay me and applaud and even cry when I do something, but they don't expect me to start listening to the music that they can produce. In science, there is a symmetry process. And it's this symmetry process actually that makes us actually do science. And today actually I had a minor short discussion with one member of the audience who's here, where I was saying that the only reason we do science is because we seek the attention of our colleagues. And the way I did it in Michigan, I said the following. I said, we are not in science for the money. And they all said, yeah. They're all very, very good. And then I said, we are in science for the attention of our colleagues. And it sounded so vain that everybody got upset. But then I said, why is it that we bother to publish? Why is it that we care about citations? We just heard about one measure of citation. Why is it that we fight as referees that they are not citing our very important paper? Why is it that we have arguments with our colleagues, sometimes to the point that we don't talk to each other for years because they fail to cite work that we did? And what is citation but a form of attention? So you see, the currency that scientists use is not your income, which is in business, how much you make or how much is your salary and bonuses and so on. It's how well known you are or your work is done. And that's measured by citations. In any institute in the world, from physics to chemistry, mathematics, and whatever, you measure the number of citations to promote people. People who are never cited don't usually get promoted, okay, unless they have other kinds of persuasive powers with the authorities. So that's the way it works, okay? So it's extremely important to understand that, because we live this illusion that we're doing science for our own pleasure. Fine, so why do we bother to publish? If all you do is just, I like to seek novelty, interesting things, why is it that I go and tell my friends, or my colleagues for that matter, okay? So this, in a sense, science, the currency of science, is not only attention. Attention is the coordination mechanism in the true economic sense of the word. It coordinates it shifts the attention. Here, this institute is quite well known for having shifted the areas of work, the research they do, away from what we would call canonical physics into things that are more interdisciplinary, that go outside what we would call today the normal realm of science. And in doing that, others notice it. Others notice this, and they might say, gee, this is an interesting result, I'm going to do something about it, measurement, and so on, and I publish, and then suddenly the whole focus of the community starts changing. And then the funding agencies are noticing this. And the funding agencies notice that through mechanism of attention. You cannot fund something you don't know that exists, or that is important. Okay? So this is extremely important. It has some ugly characteristics, because it says, gee, all I have to do then is perhaps hire some fancy-looking model sitting next to me when I give my next talk. That's the way they sell cars, by the way. Okay? And actually, it's interesting, for many of you, it's a question of age here, but when PowerPoint first appeared, a lot of people had a very negative reaction in fields like physics and mathematics. You used to look at transparencies that were done by hand and so on the blackboard lectures. And then I remember the first time I used PowerPoint, people said, what are you, a car salesman or what? And today, you can listen to very fancy talks where you have video and animation and so on, which is another form of drawing attention to the results that the researcher is trying to produce. Why? Because if you don't do that, your results drown in the number of other results that people are doing. Okay? So, this is very important, especially if you start thinking of funding agencies and so on. This is the way they operate, again. And then, even more important, attention determines not only professional standing, and that I guess is obvious. Famous people are the people that everybody pays attention and so on, but productivity. And we'll talk a little bit more about productivity later. Okay? But this is very, very important that I'll tell you about. So, those of you who disagree are more than welcome to tell me that indeed this is not the way they do science, and I think some people might think that way, but I'm willing to argue that one. And by the way, if you're interested in the research area, it would be fascinating to start looking at how attention is allocated through time to certain topics, and what are the influential individuals that somehow turn the road into something else that was different and so on. Okay? I think this very little is known, by the way, about that. Most of the studies on scientific studies and so on are number of papers per researcher and so on. I think that this is a much more interesting problem. That's what I think. And very little is known, to tell you. But indeed, it is a vanity fair, let's face it. A different kind, but we are not very different from anybody else. Okay, now, I also talked yesterday, and again, I apologize for those of you who listened to, about a different topic, which was the issue of the allocation of attention. And here I'm going to do two things. I'm going to go very fast at it, but I will tell you, and this is again the issue that we were discussing at lunch today with Professor San Miguel and some of the colleagues here, the difference between explaining and understanding and predicting. Okay? So I am a physicist, and so every once in a while, of course, I'd like to do some kind of theoretical work that leads to a prediction that then I can actually verify. And so one thing that I'm very proud of, and unfortunately I'm repeating myself from yesterday, was that I was able, in a very simple way, to predict a universal characteristic of attention, namely how is it that it's allocated. Okay? And before I do that, I'd like to be very clear that the attention that I'm talking about is attention not as a perceptual task, which is how is it that we think or attend to things and so on and focus, because first of all, there's a literature that goes back 60 years in psychology. Typical experiment, little child looking at a red ball, bell goes, how long does it take for the child to move to the bell, and so all that stuff has been done, understood. There is beautiful work that was done in particular, has been essentially summarized by work in behavioral economics and psychology by Kahneman and others. So there's a lot of work. I mean, there are books written about it, so that's not the point. What we're talking about is a social attention, which is measured by the intensity of signals addressed to a particular topic or a particular object. And that intensity is easy to measure. How many people are downloading a given video? How many people are talking about a given topic, say, in the internet? I can measure that. How many people are working on something? So that kind of social attention is the one that I'm interested in, okay? Doesn't mean that there are not others, but it's the one that in a sense is easier to measure. And I like to measure things because, as Professor San Miguel said yesterday to someone who seemed to be very upset by some of the implications of this work, this is what the data shows. You might not like it, but this is the way people are. Okay, and so that's why we need to really get objective measures of this. Otherwise, we become philosophers of some kind. So when you look at, and I'm going to show you very quickly, because I want to start showing you the difference between attention as a topic of scientific research and engineering, which is also something was alluded to yesterday. I'm going to show you engineering examples too. So one example was, I have a bunch of stuff, the websites and so on, you can look at anything, YouTube and so on, and you ask, of all the videos in YouTube, you know, how many get how many views over a given time. So I take 2 months, I look at all the videos that are 2 months available to the world, or to the people, how many of these videos get downloaded by so many people and so on. And it turns out that actually you can do a calculation over this, and since I assume that this audience has a little bit of physics or stochastic physics, I'm going to show you this equation very quickly, which is what I did. I assume that the number, okay, it's very easy to assume that, you know, so you have it, this is, by the way, we predicted this curve, and this curve has been verified in a number of systems, and I'll tell you that. But basically, it is a multiplicative noisy phenomenon that says basically that the number of people who download say a web page or a video and so on at a given time is related to the ones that downloaded at an earlier time by a certain stochastic phenomenon. And importantly enough, there is a decay factor that essentially models the decay of the novelty. If you send me an interesting video to watch, I'll download it perhaps with a certain probability, because it's all probabilistic here. The problem is that if 5 hours later I get someone else sending me that link, if I saw it, I'm not going to look at it again. Okay? And this is our biggest problem in life. We get bored. Novelty decays, so we need new things to see. So we have a decay of the attention measured by the number of clicks or downloads of the given content. And when you actually do this, and actually it's very nice to show in particular to people who only know how to do regressions, how to actually asymptotically calculate the distribution associated with this. You take the logarithm of this. This is a sum of random numbers, even though it's actually bounded by a decaying function. Okay, this is RS. It turns out that this is the central limit theorem, so that means that the log of the number of downloads is normally distributed, and you can invert that to actually predict that n is actually log normally distributed. And we went to dig, and we saw this beautiful curve, and with a tremendous accuracy, we could actually fit it to a log normal. We went to YouTube, we did the same. We go to dig, we do to Reddit, we do the same, and over and over and over again. So we know now we are dealing with a regularity that is very strong. Provided that this equation, which describes a propagation in terms of access, applies. If all I have is people going to YouTube and say, gee, what do I like to download today? Then what I get is a normal distribution. The log normal applies because people are transmitting, say, I see something cool, I send it to all my followers. A certain fraction of my followers might look at it. A certain fraction of those followers of my followers do it, and so on. So it's a cascade process through a network that has probabilistic components at each space. And most of the stuff that today we have noticed in the internet is transmitted that way. Okay? So remember the log normal thing for a second. The second thing, which I mentioned yesterday, is that the decay is also universal. And it has basically an exponential, sometimes stretch exponential form. So it means that with a few points that I can measure here, I don't need to measure all of them, I know exactly the half-life of this particular item. And so now you say, so what? Now I'm going to tell you what we use it for. And as a matter of fact, this is being used not only in our own website by a bunch of companies and so on that license the technology. One of the biggest problems, and perhaps you think it's too commercial, is how do I maximize the amount of attention that people pay to a website? Okay, so take Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard has a website. You go there and you have lots of computers or printers or whatever you want to see there, or it could be anything else. What do I do in order to maximize the attention that the system gets? Well, there are two things we know. One of them is the fact that things decay. So I can look very quickly and sample the rate at which the number of clicks on something, say on the top of the page, is decaying. I can predict how many clicks it's going to have there. I can do that for everyone and then reorder the links so as to maximize the number of attention. We tested it with a very large Danish aggregator of news online, and actually we got quite a nice result. But in order to make it even more dramatic, I'm going to show you very recent results with another system that we built in my own lab for all of Hewlett-Packard, which is called the water cooler. The water cooler is no more than a social medium for the enterprise. You can build it here for all of your institutes. Basically, people blog internally because you don't want stuff to get out of the company and so on. and there is an enormous amount of very casual interactive ways of talking about things. People do searches, comment about the weather, the competition, gossip. There are 380,000 or 60,000 employees in Hewlett-Packard worldwide. There is a very large segment of people who use this water cooler thing. When you go to water cooler, you see top item that just was pointed, was posted. The most recent goes to the top and so on. And then I said, okay, this is what we get. It's an activity. Let's see if we put this, what we call eye catcher. That's the way the mechanism is called. The patent was called eye catcher, which essentially measures the rate at which people dedicate the attention to each of these items is decay and reorders the links in order to see if we can increase the attention that we get. And here's the data. Here it is, what you get, the click-through rate, say for a month, if the most recent item is the one you put on the top of the page, which is what usually happens. We turn on eye catcher, people don't realize it. People see again a bunch of links that they're clicking on, and we get almost an increase of about 70%, which is rather impressive, you must admit. And all we do is it's amazingly simple at some level. I mean, it's complicated because there are many links, and we have to measure all these things at the same time. But basically, we just measure the rate, and then we just change it because the most novel things are the ones that catch attention, and then you get a phenomenal increase in this stuff. Okay? And there are many applications, of course, that I don't even have to go to. This is basically exploring. This is engineering. We didn't learn anything about social science. We just applied what we learned. Okay, very important. I'm going to show you now another example. If the whole thing is log normal distributed, that means that the log of the number of, say, downloads at a given time is related linearly to the log of the number of things downloaded earlier. You saw the formula. Log of nt plus 1 minus log of t was some kind of thing which is central limit theorem and is normally distributed. So with our shovel, we decided to do something that seems in principle hard to do. Can we predict the future attention or popularity of anything by measuring the rate at which it initially gets downloaded? So we went to YouTube, we grabbed, I don't know how many millions of, I'm going to show you actually the numbers so you don't remember exactly. Here it is. This is work that actually we produced, which was published actually, believe it or not, in Communications of the ACM, which is, as you know, it's a fairly nice journal. If you pay attention, everybody reads it. That doesn't matter, they read your article, but at least they know it, they notice it. Okay, so what we do is essentially, here we are in two systems. This is YouTube. Okay, so what we do is we count the rate at which certain videos are being downloaded, and it allows us to measure how many or predict how many videos will be downloaded in the future. Okay, we do the same thing with dig, and we get this curve only because the time constants of decay in dig are much shorter than in YouTube. A story on dig already lasts on the front page about an hour, and then it just goes away. Okay, and we measure that. In YouTube, things that are on the front page of YouTube, although it has changed now considerably in the last 3 months, because YouTube is becoming basically a commercial enterprise. Now it takes sometimes weeks for videos to essentially change, especially if they are very popular. Why is this interesting and important? Because once again, in the world of the attention economy, the visual real estate of your front website is everything you have. I make the claim that all companies, from companies that make, from the Googles of this world to people who make diapers and toilet paper, the company is becoming a digital interface to the world. That's the way you buy, that's the way you notice things, that's the way you learn about the world. And therefore, knowing how to maximize that visual real estate to give you the maximum return, which might be number of clicks, purchases, or whatever. In some cases, something might not get as many clicks, but every click is a sale of $1 million, you might actually want to move it up. Okay? Whereas the other one gets 20,000 clicks an hour, but you're selling it for $2.50, it's not really going to get you very far. So here is basically a way of optimizing that thing. And if you think that that's not so interesting, just think of the way most of us look at something like this, our phones. The visual real estate is even smaller. So learning how to display effectively stuff on a phone so that whoever is putting the stuff there gets the maximum number of views is a very, very valuable thing. Now, might be that in this audience I shouldn't be talking about valuable things, but I thought that is something that I ought to sort of mention. And last, and then I'll go to the next thing, which is a little more academically interesting perhaps. Yesterday I mentioned this fact that we can predict box office revenues very accurately by looking at the attention that people give it by going to Twitter. Again, Jeff Madera asked me today, is this something that works? Not only works, it works very well, because not only do we predict movies, which is easy to measure because it's the number of dollars, we can predict all sorts of other things, popularity of certain actors and so on in certain TV channels. And unfortunately, I cannot disclose the names of the people that, or the companies we're dealing with, but it's a technology that is actually fairly robust, okay, to do that. Most of you saw that, so you don't want to see it, right? Or you want me to show it again? I mean, it's up to those who saw it. You want me to show you how we do this, or you're not interested? Yes?
Please, let's go.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Go ahead, what are you saying?
Are you going to show something? Are you going to show something different on yesterday? Or?
I will show you more stuff afterwards, yes. But if you want to leave, it's fine too. No, it's okay. So you want me to show you? Okay, huh? Okay, so I'll be very quick because indeed this can get very boring for me. But the basic idea is a very simple intuition. I wanted to see whether or not we could predict something, especially the future. People predict usually the past. People do regressions in economics or econometrics to data and say, see, my model predicts that indeed inflation should have been whatever it is today. But that's not so interesting. I want to know what inflation is going to be a year from now and make a number out of that. And the only reason that I chose movies, and I always say this, is not because it's an interesting topic, is because associated with the prediction of that future is a scalar, a number, which is dollars. And dollars, you go to a website on Sunday night in the United States, and it tells you how much a movie made. That's it. So we wanted to come to that number. So I don't know how many of you are in computer science. We used a very fairly robust machine learning technique that allowed us to measure, basically, to predict this on the basis of the rate at which people tweet about movies that are about to be announced. It was a study that took us a long time because there were 24 movies. Not all movies appear on the same day of the year. They are staggered, of course. So we did this over and over and over again. We did it for 24 movies, and we did extremely well. What we measured here is, this is the rate at which people tweet about movies. And even though I don't tell you anything about the results, look at how the rate changes over time. Suddenly a movie, this is the rate, tweets per hour or whatever, suddenly it goes down. Some others are going nowhere, and eventually suddenly they start going up, and so on. So you see that things change. People are talking about it. And as I said yesterday, and it's even more important that I do it that way, I'm going to show you now. The important thing is to say that this is a release weekend. So before the weekend, the movie comes out, people are talking. As a matter of fact, the studios are inserting a lot of stuff onto Twitter, little clips and so on about the movies and so on. People talk. So our assumption was if someone talks more about one movie than the other, more people will show up at the box office than the other. So we calibrated with movies that we already people saw and so on. We got a machine learning technique, and then we did it. And then we came here. Now after this, and I don't know how many of you know about the technology, people now talk about something they saw, so they know what they're talking about. We do sentiment analysis. I don't know how many of you are familiar with sentiment analysis. It's a very nice linguistic technology today, machine learning, that allows you to measure the sentiment of a piece of text about anything, positive, negative, or neutral. You can do that in Spanish or in Danish, Swedish, Russian, or whatever, and give you a piece of text and tell me whether or not that piece of text has been, is positive, negative, or neutral. The question is, can you teach a machine to do that? So first we use humans. And I forgot to mention this because it's very important. I used a lot of humans. I needed not just my lab to train the machine. We show them a lot of tweets on all sorts of kinds of things, especially about movies, and then they classify positive, negative, neutral, and so on. And the way I did that was to go to Mechanical Turk. I don't know how many of you know about Amazon Mechanical Turk, but we were able to go to thousands and thousands of users. You pay them to do this for you. At the end of the study, take Dr. Graham comes to me and says, time to pay. I said, how many? He said, well, about 5,000 people. I said, don't tell me. How much is it? $37.50. No. You talk about cheap labor, go to Mechanical Turk, you'll see. We've done a lot of work on Mechanical Turk. In any event, with that, we were able to measure the sentiment and so on, so you can do all this. I'm not going to go here, you can measure. I'm telling you this because you might want to use it about other things, politics, news, scientific articles, and so on. So each bar is this, in this case, is the subjectivity for each movie. This is before the release. This is the week after, second week. Okay, so you see that in this case, the subjectivity went up. If the subjectivity is 1, means that it's neutral, essentially, okay? You can also measure the polarity, which is the ratio of positive to negative, and so on. You can do all sorts of very interesting things. At the end of the day, you get with numbers like this. This is what we predicted for these 2 movies, which were totally unknown, basically, and you can see that the actuals are very good. And for 24 movies, we got a phenomenal, very, very accurate prediction. But this is not what I wanted to tell you about, because you already heard. I also show an example where our statistics was not very good. For 18, the studios were predicting $72 million. We predicted 32. The actual was 28. And I compare with the gold standard, which is the Hollywood Stock Exchange, which did worse than we did, which is interesting. Okay. So I will now go into a little more social, interesting stuff that perhaps might interest you. It has to do with collective social dilemmas. Inherent in this phenomenon of the West is something that I call a paradox. The paradox is the following. We are all producing this immense amount of content, videos. Think of YouTube, fantastic company. It produces an immense number of videos and it's getting it for free. Imagine you creating a studio and saying, okay guys, make movies for me. What do I get paid? Nothing. Just send it to me, I'll broadcast. Yet millions of people are doing that all the time. Millions. I create a system called Twitter. Hey, little blogs for me, people do it. Okay. So it's sort of paradoxical, because you could imagine that it's rational for someone to download videos that others produce, which is expensive and so on. It's rational to do that rather than to produce it for others. The idea would be, okay, I'm going to go to YouTube, which is what I do. I go to YouTube and I enjoy myself. I watch videos. I seldom produce a video for the rest of the world. Problem is that if all of us think like this, no videos are produced. If everybody thinks that it's rational not to produce any videos, we stay home watching videos that no one produces, then there's nothing. Okay? So there's something very interesting in this case, and this is exactly what happens with a public good. This is why, as I always say, there's no country on this planet that we know of where taxes are voluntary. And most of you know why. Because if they rely on us sending a check to the authorities, that's why some of you are smiling. You will say, let the others send a check and so if everybody does that, boom, no checks. Okay, so it's a law that says you have to. But there is no law in YouTube, there is no law in any of these systems. So this is to me the very, very interesting problem. So what I'd like to show you, and this is actually a conjecture that I had for a long time, that the reason there is no paradox is because the social dilemma of the production of a public good, in this case videos or text and so on, is not a dilemma because it's not a public good, it's a private good. You do get paid, but you do get paid in attention. Now, that's a conjecture. I'm going to show you another data. In order to do that, I'd like to tell you about an experiment that I ran while I was in Paris and learning behavioral economics. Okay, and this is a very important thing because I really would like to spend a little bit of time. And then it's quite insightful. I'm not insightful because I did it, but it's something that actually the French were totally shocked. Okay, especially when French sociologists are shocked. That's important. Okay, so the idea was, why is it that people seek attention? Or let's put it this another way. Why do people like status? What is status? It's a marker for attention. Okay? If I were to walk in here, and this is a military academy and full of medals and so on, that's a high status person. If I had all the epaulette full of gold stuff and so on. If you're a lowly soldier that walks around like this, no one notices, low status. Okay. So, in other fields, if the gold, the Nobel Prize or whatever it is, we always like the status associated with certain things. And so, the question was, at that time, why is it that we seek status? I mean, why? So then you go to the library, and especially if you're in France, that was at that time, you have lots of big, thick books that tell you why you seek status. It's very complicated, but it's things like we want access to resources. The more resources, the more power we feel. It's usually men who want that and all that. Okay, it goes on and on and on. You can read Bourdieu and Foucault. It gets very complicated very quickly. What is missing, or was missing then, and this is why this paper has got such actually, to me, surprising amount of attention by social psychologists, is that very seldom people ask that perhaps we seek status because we are wired to seek status. It's something wired up and we cannot do anything about it. Question is, can we decide between the two? When I asked the French sociologists if they thought that status is something wired in us, they were horrified. I mean, the idea that there is something, Darwinian in this was awful. Okay, Everything has to be explained by the effects of society view. So we decided to run an experiment. And I'm going to tell you about the experiment. This is a very interesting experiment. I learned how to do the experiment from my collaborator, Aisha Schuler, who was, he still is, a behavioral economist, and then we did this work together. So, here was the experiment. We had groups of about 15 people walking into a room, not very different from this one. There was a big table in the middle of the room, and on the table there was a lottery, an old-fashioned lottery you could see through with balls, and you turn the whole thing, and the ball would come out, just like that. And everybody, I mean, it cost us a lot of money to run this experiment, but it was really fun and worth it. Everybody, and I'm lying in the sense of the numbers, but I want you to make it very easy. Everybody was given, let's say, 100 euros in bills of 10 bills of 10 euros, and an envelope. And the instructions were, you have to bid for the right to play the lottery. The highest bid, play the lottery. Otherwise, you can take the money and walk away with the money that we gave you. You can just leave the room with 100 euros if you want to. If you win the right to the lottery will pay around 200 something euros. Everybody stayed. No one ever left. Now, if 2 people bid the max, then, or 3 people, then we have to flip a coin because there's nothing else we can do. Okay. The catch was that the highest bidder won the right to play the lottery, but the odds of winning that lottery were proportional to the amount of money you had left. There's a catch there. Okay, so you can bid your 100 euros, but then the odds of winning 250 is 0, so you just lost the 100 euros. So it's a game theory problem, and actually there is a solution. I'm not going to go through the game theory with you, but I'll tell you what the answer is in theory. This is what economists write about. The theory says that you should actually bid half, and then you maximize the expected payoff. Okay, that was the idea. So people put their bids, we put them all there, and so it's really fun to see the whole thing. But they did, some of them win, they all lost, or whatever. Only one person eventually plays the thing. They all left. We paid them for being there just a euro or 2, and we did that many times. That's why it was expensive. And then we collected the data and we saw how people bid. These people were not economists. They were just normal students that some of them didn't even know much more than just elementary arithmetic. And when we did that, we got a beautiful Gaussian distribution, a normal distribution centered around 50. So that means that people intuitively or whatever, they were doing the right thing. Most of them. Some were bidding too much, some were bidding too little, but some were bidding right on the top. So far, so good, and you could perhaps write a paper on experimental economics. But that was not the point, because I was interested in why people seek attention. So here it comes. We did that for about 8 or 9 times, and then we did the same experiment with a slight change. We asked people, again, to bid for the lottery and so on, but this time, these were different people, to write their name on the envelope, and then the winner of that bid would be announced to the group of 15. They didn't even know each other, and we asked that politely the other 14 applaud. They laughed like you. They thought that we were stupid, silly, why do we bother? But we just asked them to do that. Okay, so we did it many times. I'm not going to repeat the story. You can actually read the paper. And what did we get? What we got was a beautiful Gaussian again, shifted to the right. That means that on average, people were willing to win the lottery. Actually, they were decreasing the likelihood of winning the lottery, because remember, you bid higher than half, you're essentially decreasing the lottery, in exchange for the applause of 15 unknowns that they will never see again. It's quite interesting, and actually, I'll tell you, as an experiment, it was quite sobering, because we saw it for what it was. Now, here it is. So we were all excited. We saw that people are trading money for attention. Money for attention. We know that the rich do that, but we don't think of ourselves as doing that. We trade, as scientists, we trade our own efforts for the sake of attention. We work extra hard on those hard problems that we know that if we solve them, we get the Fields Medal for the same reason, right? But in a way, it's all conjectural. Here you have a very good example that people were trading trivial amounts of money for this. So what happens then was, very excitedly, I went and told these people at the École Polytechnique that these results, and they said something like, I don't believe a word of this, most likely because it was done in INSEAD, which is the European School of Business, and you are in America, this is all this capitalist thing, has nothing to do with this idea of money and attention and so on. I said, look, you know, all they're seeking is not the money. The money was the driver here. The interesting thing was they thought, well, business schools. So we spent 9 months hiring people all over the world to run this experiment everywhere. Turkey, Germany, France again, England, the United States, Hong Kong, and so on. Just to give you an idea, when we did it in Hong Kong, we got almost a delta function shifted against the wall. And that's the reason for that. It's because in China, status and attention are huge. And you can see that today in China. People spend fortunes on big brand labels. I don't know if you know that Louis Vuitton, I was talking to the managers 2 years ago, designs a bag with an L and a V that is twice the size of the Louis Vuitton that they sell everywhere in Europe. Okay, it's interesting. Just, it's obvious that we're seeing something here, okay? In any event, so we did this. For those of you who come in Germany, we ask people instead of applauding to take the heels and bow. I shifted I can say that without problem because Christoph Loch is German and he's the one who suggested it. And so on and so on. And actually, the smaller shift was seen in Scandinavia, egalitarian society, people are not supposed to speak above others and so on. So we saw in Sweden, for instance, a very small shift. We saw a very large shift in men more than in women. It has to do with all sorts of very complicated reasons. I mean, women don't seem to like the attention that comes out of applause because they write comments about this. So all of you, if you want, you can read this paper. It took us forever. Speaking with Maxi San Miguel today, it took us forever to write the paper because the funny thing is that eventually the sociologists liked it, but we kept getting this review saying, how come you don't cite the work of so-and-so? And how do and we have to write in a particular way. So this is exactly the mechanism that we all use in order to get attention even for our colleagues when we publish it. So, why do I tell you this? Because with this insight, I decided to then do the following. We went to YouTube, and we started measuring first if there was a correlation between the attention that the videos that you produce get, namely measured by the number of downloads, that's publicly available data, and your productivity. And we saw an enormous correlation. Okay? But even more importantly, so I'm going to tell you this because I don't like to read what I write. I mean, you can read it too, okay? So the productivity actually is a very strong positive dependence on attention. Uploads compared to others very quickly. People look, when they upload, they look at the numbers that they're getting others, and they eventually start comparing to their own number of downloads, especially after a certain level, and so on. And then even more interestingly, we started looking at people who stopped uploading after being big uploaders. And we looked back in time, and what we saw was that the number of downloads that their videos were getting was going down and down and down and down, and then eventually they stopped producing new videos. It is as if you write papers that no one accepts, or no one reads, or no one cites, and so on. Okay. But even more important, and I'd like to say this, I used the Granger measure of causality to show that this was causal and not correlated. Granger was a phenomenal economist that actually developed a technology, and some of you might actually want to use it someday, that allows you to see that if there are two, say, series of numbers that seem correlated with a strong correlation coefficient, whether or not they are causally related to each other, and what you do is essentially you do a shift in time. You shift one and see whether or not the correlations persist. And when you shift it the other way, they don't. Okay, so that's the way you actually can do this causality reason, which is very nice, actually, for which he got a Nobel Prize. If I'm not wrong, I think he's the famous guy who got the Nobel Prize, and the day before flying to Stockholm had a heart attack and died. But before he did that, he also published this very nice piece of work. And so I think that it's a very, very nice thing that actually shows this a very, very keen way. And once you know this, there are zillions of ways to motivate people to produce things for you. Okay? So we don't need now to pay them. All you have to do is to call their attention to one form or the other. And there are, interestingly enough, there are lots of heuristics in the world that do that. Okay, I don't know here, but in the United States, I always thought it was the silliest thing in the world. Now I realize I was very, very naive. If you go to a department store in America, anyone, and you go to the third floor where usually are the administration offices, you see all these photos of employee of the month. I always say, who cares? Why would they bother to do that? But now you know why. Because all the other employees are seeing that photo. And people feel tremendously happy and good that their photo is seen by the other. They did something special. They don't need a raise. All you have to do is just give a photo, or a pat in the back, or whatever. So I'm not telling you this is the way you should administer life, but I'm telling you that attention is something that really trumps that. Very, very easy. Very easy. And when you look at how very wealthy people live, it's precisely that. Okay? I come from Silicon Valley, which is a very interesting area to live in, where, as a former CEO of Hewlett-Packard used to say, you go south to Los Angeles, he says, all show, no money. Everybody rents fancy cars and so on. They have no money whatsoever. And you go to Silicon Valley, there are billionaires in shorts and a t-shirt, and they don't care. But the status is there. Everybody knows who they are, the kinds of cars they drive, and so on. So it's a very, very clear signal that everybody gets. Being cool, knowing where you work, having the right t-shirt that tells you whether or not you're Google or Facebook or Twitter, all those things are really what make people actually go for it. Okay, so that's the first thing. And yes.
Somehow, at some point, you were missing a status and attention, and you used that as a synonym.
No, I said, yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, there's
a market.
less explanation of that, because in this final piece that you are explaining about this mega billionaire,
yes.
So it's not attention, it's a status.
But attention, status is the market. If a high status person walks through this door, everybody notices it. Even more interesting, we like to be next to high status people, which is high income of attention, but some of them raps on us. Because now, who's Bernardo? No one knows. But look, Bernardo is next to George Clooney. This guy must be someone. Okay, people hang around it. It's a system that actually is like money. It really goes down, trickles down on people. This is why people like to hang out with celebrities. Why would you care otherwise? Why do we care so much about the life of celebrities? Because somehow we feel that knowing a little bit about that rubs on us. So status is no more than a marker, I say, a marker. Okay, this is high status. Mark Zuckerberg, he makes a big fuss out of just walking with a hoodie and so on. You can see him around. He's not a big deal, Steve Jobs and that. But they know who they are. They know that everybody pays attention, and everybody wants to be near them too, for a reason. It's not that they're giving money away. As a matter of fact, they don't. They're very tight with money. Okay, so let me now go to the next step, which I think is very interesting, and I would like to finish very soon because I would like, actually, since Max is this whole issue of big science and theory and so on, which is very related to some of these things. But let me now just give you an example. Another thing that we are very interested in is the issue of seeking attention. So I'm going to now show you something very, very interesting, which actually ended up having been called even by social psychologists the paradox, which is nice, okay? Which is the issue of what is the role that persistence in achieving attention plays in life. Okay? So, most of you go to YouTube and consume, but you don't understand there's another group of people who produce videos and they love the number of downloads and so on. Am I doing something? No. Air conditioning? Yeah, good, thank you. Okay. So, many people want to get whatever they do in life noticed. I don't know about science, perhaps someday some of you might do that through the citation index. I hear that a group in Helsinki now has it, and they can play games with it and so on. What I wanted to do that was actually using YouTube. It's very easy to look at data and so on. So what I want to show you is a very interesting study we did with Frank Wu on this issue of persistence and attention. I mean, the persistence of doing something so that eventually we'll get attention. There is a whole game played by millions of people uploading videos to YouTube, hoping that that video has the largest number of downloads ever. That's the thing, right? That's the attention you want. It's a big game. People do that all the time, and so on. They're very famous videos, as you know, some of them very trivial, but nevertheless they're like this. So let me now talk a little bit about seeking attention in a different way. And you can read about the study, the quantitative pieces, but I want to show you the curves. The first thing is, we know that persistence at doing something usually increases the quality of what you do. You persist at doing exams, math, or you persist at doing paintings or whatever, you get better and better quality. This was something a very nice person did for me, but essentially this is what we wanted to ask, and this is what we wanted to see. Persistence is strongly correlated with success. Okay? That's what everybody tells you. Your parents told you that. Work hard at things, you'll be successful. At least that's what on the other side of the Atlantic they say. Okay. No, I don't know here. Okay, in any event. So this is the issue, okay? Second, we wanted to know how this persistent upload increases the chances of being successful. And what do I measure by successful? Being on the top 1% of the number of downloads. That changes every week or every month, every year. So that's what we define. It's a quantile. Okay. Now we know that persistence actually does things very interesting, and this is a beautiful way of showing you. This is a marvelous. I like it very much. It's a painting by Vermeer, and it's obvious to all of you and to me that Vermeer did not wake up one day and he said, "I'm going to be a painter. This is my first painting," and he got this. Obviously, there was a tremendous amount of practice and so on. So let's look at videos now and uploads, and I'm going to show you the quality of the video, the quality as a function of the number of videos that have been created. How do I know the quality? People vote on videos. So this is the democratic notion of popularity or quality, which is how many stars the video gets. And here's the data, very nice. 10 million video uploads to YouTube. This is the average rating. And as a function of an index, which is is this my first video, the 20th video, the 40th video, and so on. You do the average over all things. You have to be very careful how you do the statistics, and you get this very nice increase with the number of videos that people do. Okay, so Bernardo, my 10th video is obviously better judged by the millions of people who download my video than my first one. So there are other cases that we know and I'm going to talk about, but this is the important thing. So far the quality. Now what is the likelihood of success, which means that it will have the most number of downloads, so the 1% and so on. This is what I want to show you. And so here it is. So what we measure is very important. The number of producers who failed in the K-1 video was not in the top 1%, but succeeded in the next one, divided by the number of producers who failed in the K and are still uploaded. Okay, some people failed, but they still upload. So this is like a, I don't know. There are many hazard function or something like that. So I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it. This is what we measure, and here's the data. So you see that the conditional success probability, which is essentially what I just told you, decreases very fast, which is so funny. It says basically that the harder you try, the quality goes up, but the chances of being successful goes down almost exponentially. Okay, and this is a very consistent result we see over and over and over again. So much indeed that a lot of people in social psychology and actually people interested in this kind of field in informatics and so on, they ended up calling it the persistence paradox. Why would you persist knowing that your chances are going down? Because you see them. They don't measure these things, but they notice it. Okay? So, let me just show you that's basically to compare with the conditional probability, okay, the success probability for a lottery with 1% success. It's higher. If you keep flipping a coin till you get, the success story, you do better than you do by uploading videos, okay? And the last one, okay, so if you can actually measure the success probability for it after case submissions, it's no more than this, okay? For a lottery with a 1% chance after K trials is that number. It's not a very difficult thing to do. The trial always the same probability, and if you measure that once again, you end up with a situation where the blue beats the red. So here you have a situation where we don't understand, we don't know how to explain, and yet it's an interesting social behavioral result. I have 5 minutes, right? I will now finish by telling you about a controversy, and hopefully some of you will resonate with this. We had already a little bit of a discussion this morning. All this work that I showed you today, all of it was produced with data that I get publicly in the internet. I go to YouTube and I download this stuff. So if you doubt any of my results, and you're more than entitled to doubt them, you can go and do the same experiment on my set of results or others, and you better get the same result, otherwise what I'm telling you is just anecdotal. Okay, that's important. Everybody who's a physicist or a scientist here said, you're talking double set. That's exactly what science is all about. Unfortunately, computational social science is exactly the opposite of this. Most of the results that are being produced today are from data sets that are impossible to access by most of us, unless you have friends in Silicon Valley. I happen to have friends. But I also understand that there is a, Occupy Wall Street movement in the rest of the world. Namely, the rest of the world doesn't have any access to this data, and therefore they're totally cut off from this. So this is very, very important that I tell you about, because this is becoming a huge trend. There are papers by Facebook people, by Yahoo people, by Microsoft people, by Google people. And they tell you that because of privacy, they cannot reveal it, they cannot give you the access to the data. There are even people in university that tell you, we just did a piece of work on social mobility using undisclosed, mysterious telephone data that we got from a country we cannot tell you. So by now, it smells so much like Madrid, it's incredible. But that's because we know that Telefonica was at one point made available that data to a set of researchers who somehow you cannot see our data. So we don't really know what the heck that data means, even though they keep publishing papers. So I believe, and I published a letter in Nature, which actually was amplified in the New York Times through a very interesting article, that we are really headed to a very complicated state of affairs here. We're going to end up in a situation, it's already happened at the World Wide Web conference I was at in Lyon, where a subset of people are producing what the rest watches and says is interesting, and the rest of the people cannot even access that data, verify that data, or even have a chance to compete with these people. Not that the people are better, it's just they have access to friends that we don't have. Okay? And so I really want to, this is an editorial comment, but it's an important one. It has some deep consequences, because verifiability means that if I say something to you and you don't believe it, you can do an experiment to see whether or not you agree with me in your data. And the problem with computer science is even more complicated, because suppose that I give you my data and you go and run your algorithm on my data, say, I don't see this at all, I see something else. And so we say, who's right and who's wrong? Well, you must be wrong, right? So we look at the algorithm. It's impossible when you have a program that runs 5,000 lines of code to see which one made a mistake or not, or what is it that the program is measuring, and so on. And this goes into issues of verifiability, which, as you know, is a big problem in computer science, over which essentially very little progress has been made already, whether or not programs are correct, and so on. So I leave you with this, because I really think that all of you, if you're interested in this topic, will eventually end up with it. And last but not least, the issue of big data versus theory. And I think that that's perhaps a matter of debate that should go on after my talk, which is, do we write simple theories that allow us to explain and understand what's really going on, or we just rely on gigantic amounts of data to predict the world without understanding why it works so well, okay? The trend today is to go to big data, forget about theory. As a matter of fact, there were a couple of articles saying theory is dead, the end of theory, and so on. I don't necessarily believe it. Perhaps it's because aesthetically I'm totally committed to a very different program of research, but it's up to you. Okay? And I know attention is finite, and an hour is an hour, so it's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernardo. We'll certainly implement the idea of posting the photograph of the PhD student of the month and see if it works or not.
I bet you that it will.
We'll make this better. Comments, questions? Yes, please.
Staying with science, as a bit naive old-fashioned scientist, I still believe in curiosity-driven research. What you say actually is the currency is not curiosity, the currency or the driving force is attention.
If it was only curiosity, why would you bother to tell us what you discovered?
True, to some extent, I do recognize that attention is the growing currency. What do you think is the influence of that on science?
Enormous. It's just that we are not even aware of it. You just said it very well. I went into science because I was curious. But that was at a time in my life, like most of us, I think, that perhaps because we are adolescents, we are complicated, we might be emotionally constipated, I don't know what. We find in science a tremendous sense of, reward and so on. That's where you start. But someday, you find out something and you want to tell the world, right? And you want to tell people who appreciate what you did. To tell a girlfriend of yours that doesn't care about science, hey, I discovered how the sun shines. You say, oh, how interesting. Tell me, where are we going for the movies? So the point is, you want to tell that to people who can reward you. Those in particular, by the way, is so asymmetric that you would prefer attention from someone that has a high status in science from someone who's low status in science, right? You would like the very big, famous professor or whatever to tell you that's fantastic, rather than graduate student who say, well, no, that's okay. It's true. So I believe that curiosity, indeed, is a tremendous driving force. But then why do we go to the next step? Fight with referees, write a paper, get it published, go to conferences, and all that. Okay, that's the part that I'm saying. I I didn't say curiosity is not important. It's huge. Without curiosity, you'll never be a good scientist. Absolutely.
But I had the impression that the nature of the science is changing. With that attention always translates more and more into money, right?
Not necessarily. I would say there is a very famous experiment done in the 1950s at Columbia University. Actually, it's Gary Becker, who's now a Nobel Prize in Physics and Economics. He went to a party of the physics department. And you heard this story. It's a fantastic story. He was at a party of the physics department at Columbia University in the 50s. That's, the Feynman era and all that. And he announced to all of them that he was willing to write them a check for $100 then in exchange for the full amount of the Nobel Prize they might eventually win. Guess what? Not a single one took the check. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? He offered it. The expected value is obvious, right? Take $100, put it in 4% yield, and you make more money than ever expecting a Nobel Prize to never get. So, so I believe that, okay.
That's the wrong question, isn't it?
Yes.
The persistency paradox, is that not a direct consequence of the scarcity of attention?
In what sense?
Well, if it's just a given law that you just have to try enough, and your chances basically grow all the time, then everybody would just have to keep on trying, and naturally the success rate would increase, but then the attention would have to be distributed, and then it would get reduced.
But still, your video is getting better and better. So how come is your video?
Because the attention is not getting more. The attention which is available is limited. So if all videos become getting better, then the attention doesn't necessarily get more available.
Okay, then why do you bother problem? If that's what you know, and perhaps you're
I don't know.
I'm listening. No, why do people bother their problem? Waiting to get to that top 1%, which is actually announced.
Because you want to.
Well, I was told that it was a Tarantino effect. Quentin Tarantino. He did Pulp Fiction, first movie he ever made, huge hit. Every other movie he's made was never as big as that. That's what I'm told. That somehow, what happens is, huh?
It was not the first one.
It was not the first
one.
Oh, okay, then, okay.
Second one didn't. It's not going to watch many movies, you can see. They will never get
I was told that the reason for this, but they use the Quentin Tarantino, was that you get fixated on a style, and people get tired of that style. Okay, that's what I was told. But everybody is speculating on this. I don't think that we have an answer. But that's a very good projection. Wait, someone else?
There's so many questions. Constantine?
Yeah, it's mostly referring to what Ingo already asked. I don't know, the currency of science being attention is your projection. The thing is it really the scientists that seek the attention, or do they only indirectly seek the attention via the funding agencies again? Because maybe for them, for the money givers, the attention is directly related to possible income, for example, patents and so on. So creating attention for scientific work would then mean more money for future research, right? So
Okay.
I don't know. I would just say, and I would like to believe that there's still some idealists among the scientists.
It has nothing to do with idealism. I'm still an idealist. I'm sure you are one too. It's just that we have to recognize it. But let me answer your question. This phenomenon existed long before funding agencies. Long before. The phenomenon of the fame of Albert Einstein right after World War I had nothing to do with funding agencies. The phenomenon of Watson and Crick discovering the structure of DNA, and Watson eventually writing a book called The Double Helix. If you don't believe, buy that book. It's a scandal. Where he said, I want a Nobel Prize. He was 23 years old, and he went and worked on the problem. He knew he was going to get him that. And a few years ago, he was actually giving a talk. And he was talking about what happened after that famous paper, the structure of DNA and so on. And he said, I was able to get the girls after that. He said, look at me. He said, no one paid attention to me. I went to parties at Harvard hanging my Nobel medal on my suit. That's what he said. Well, that's crass. And, that's not what so what I'm trying to say, I don't think it's a funding agency. I think it's more of a human thing. And I don't think that, I know that I was provocative, and we don't like that. But if you introspect, doesn't mean you're not an idealist. I didn't say that. I'm not saying that you're going to do terrible work in order to get attention and so on. But there is a component of that recognition. Let's call it recognition. Forget about attention. Let's call it recognition. Okay. It's there. Most of us don't like recognition, but it's there.
Sure.
Okay, so thank you for the nice talk, first of all. So you said that if taxes were voluntary, nobody would pay. Okay, so then there are these initiatives or those pages which serve crowdfunding opportunities for people, and people there are basically anonymous. Well, some of them they can log in with Facebook or something like this, then they become less anonymous, right? And the thing is that the projects which appear there, they get more and more money. It's like year by year, it's getting more and more popular. Like Kickstarter, for instance, or there's more and more pages like this. And people, they don't pay attention there, and they donate money for the things. Okay, that's one example. And the other one is actually, you talked yesterday about Wikipedia, and it's and that it is done by people, right? And also people there, I don't think they look for attention, although I think even though they are anonymous there as well, they may not get attention, but they are part of something big. And I think that's the point. It's not only attention. I think it's also having a feeling that we are doing something bigger.
So I think you raised two very good points, and I am fortunate that I can answer partly this because I worked on this issue of social dilemma, and I collected an immense number of cases by economists on this. It's a tremendous critical evidence. First of all, you're right. There are people who are altruistic. That's basically the point. Okay? Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you can interrupt, it's not that there are only people who are altruists and who go there. I think so. Actually, Zuckerberg invested in the project which was compatible with Facebook, which is for diaspora, in Kickstarter, like $100,000 or something like this. Maybe it's more for years. But still.
Okay, so I didn't say that there are not people who look. There's a famous study of a battalion of soldiers in war. A hand grenade lands, thrown by the enemy, and one guy throws himself on top of the grenade, and boom, the whole thing goes. People do that. And there's a whole thing on gene selection by Hamilton and so on. There's a whole theory of this. The case of Wikipedia is very interesting because in Wikipedia, the most active members of Wikipedia get tremendous accolades. And I'm sure you do that. I mean, there's the most famous one that she gets immense number of accolades. If you don't believe me, go to her website and
But she's anonymous.
Well,
I mean, she can decide to.
She has a name. She's called Slim Virgin. She's from Cambridge University, she claims. Okay. Huh?
She's anonymous.
She's anonymous in the sense that you don't know her name. Might be Martha, whoever, Johnny, I don't care. But she sees the thing. Little rotary thing, the stars, thank you, love you, fantastic, and so on. So, I once was at a talk by a very famous economist, and someone said, what about Mother Teresa? He said, what about Mother Teresa? You know about Mother Teresa? He said, Mother Teresa said it explicitly. It was not a public good, it was a private good. Because she said, I expect to meet Jesus Christ after I die. So she had an expectation of a day of after her death. Long life eternal. No, but I'm serious about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what she said. And I believe that many of us, of course, do things out of altruistic mode, or as you said, just to help something, and sometimes it's not that costly. But I would say that overall, the taxes are a great example. Okay, now there are lots of people who donate money to governments and so on. But overall, free riding is an incredible phenomenon that everybody cares about. That's all I was trying to say. Overall, in any system you see free riding. You allow people, if you put here a box and says, in order to enter this movie theater, please volunteer your put $2 or €2 or whatever. Out of that audience, a fairly large fraction will put nothing. Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
In the end, also in Kickstarter, there is like 20,000 model characters or something. So it's
Okay, I'll stop it here because there are a few other questions. We take a few more and then we'll go coffee and we can continue discussing. Yes, London.
I wanted to ask a variant of the same kind of question. I'm not an expert on YouTube, but I have the feeling that most people don't use their names; they use alias, so they can. The uploaders have these strange things, and they can they have deniability. Whereas scientists, I doubt scientists would actually assign their papers with an alias.
Right. Okay, you're right. But on the other hand, the number of downloads determines your satisfaction with the movie you produce. You might not want to be known by others, but you measure your status by the number of stars or downloads the movie gets.
It's an attention, it's a completely private attention.
Well, it's private, but it's attention. You don't care if you don't care that no one downloads your movie, you would keep producing, and yet people don't do that. I mean, there's exception of people who put a video so the family can see, but we're not talking about it. We're talking about the heavy producers. Okay, so you're right, and there are scientists who indeed might be more humble than others and so on. But the fact is, they want the recognition in their colleagues one way or the other. Okay? Even those who reject the Nobel Prize, like Jean-Paul Sartre, for example. Yes.
There's something I don't understand about the persistence paradox and producers in YouTube. Aren't you comparing two different measures? Like you said that each time you upload a video, the average score gets better.
Yes.
But that's not the number of downloads. I mean, you would have
No,
a
the
better
score, I said. The score. The number of stars.
And that's related to the number of downloads?
No. That's the quality. That's the quality.
That's my remark. I mean, you were comparing on one side the number of downloads and whether you make it to the first 1%.
That's the number of downloads.
Whether you make a better video that maybe is not downloaded either. Maybe
I agree with
people
you.
see it, but they rate it. Very good video. Your friends.
I totally agree with you. In one case, you're getting the quality of your video to go up by the consensus of the community. Quality, no downloads. The other one is you want to get to the top in terms of the top number of downloads. That's what people go for, and actually, there's a whole discussion groups on this. You're right. There are two different things. I said
the paradox. That's my remark.
no. The paradox is that The paradox is that usually persistence leads to success, and if by success I mean being on the top 1% of all the number of downloads, you don't get there unless you get the first time. That's all I was saying. Yes.
On the same way, the persistence paradox. When you check this rating of a movie, you check who rates who, because like social networks have high clustering, so maybe you make a community of losers. Like the more you persist, let me put just an example. You go into a poster session, okay, all the PhDs go there, and nobody's paying attention to your poster, and neither does to your neighbor. So you just go and talk to your neighbor. Wait, then he comes back and talks to you. Or you get a system where you just get on top of the line by chance, and then it's a richer processes.
Yes.
So that might explain why.
By what? What do you explain with that?
Wait, sorry. So, when you're not successful, you try and try again, and you get to know people that are trying and trying again, so that's why you rate their videos good, expecting that they will rate your videos good.
Rating, yes, but downloading it to the point that you're the 1% is a whole different story. And you can get that, but you get it at the first time, on average, on the first time.
That's why, I mean, because when you do it the first time and you're lucky enough, you just by knowledge it's up, and more people, well, they say, okay, that's good, and then.
No, but the point is, you expect that the probability, if your videos are getting better and you try, you see that it goes up, but here it goes down, exponentially fast. The downloads, not the quality. The quality, we agree, it goes up nicely because everybody.
No, but that's what I'm telling you. Maybe the quality is not going up.
Oh, okay, that might be the case. Okay, you're an explanation that this is
just gonna check who is rating you, because like that's not the more you get into a community. First day you go into a place.
Well, I would have to, I would have to, it's hard to tell, but perhaps it would be interesting to know.
Just to check who is
clustering.
Yeah, because like.
We'll take the last question and then we're going to continue with the coffee.
To the previous one. Is the fact that you compute some metrics for different groups of people.
Yes.
Those uploading just once is a group. Those uploading 10 times and going for the 11th.
Yes.
And how you, I don't think it is straightforward to compare the statistics from those groups. I mean,
No, not just one. I looked at all of them and I said, how many of all the ones that got to the 1%? The first time they submitted, the second time, the nth time, or whatever. Usually, the most probable of all that sample is the one that was submitted first. That's what I was saying.
The idea is that popularity is a random process there, magic.
Yes.
So, the most likely is that the first time you upload, just a few people will get the success.
Yes.
But as you keep going and going for
But why the first time and not the fourth time?
because this is the majority of people. The vast majority of people upload just once. So you keep computing statistics for the minority. It depends on the minority. You understand what I mean?
Sort of. So to talk to you more, I'm missing something.
So the first number is computed over a big population.
Yes.
But the 10th number is computed over a small population.
Small, there.
So they are not comparable. So you cannot compare success.
No, but even for the same person,
That is not the same person. Because
of course it is.
if you just upload once,
But you don't upload once, you upload many times. It's just that one, sometimes the first one is the one that gets over.
maybe the question is how many people upload just once?
Oh, not of them, but this is not the sample that we were looking. We're looking at the most active people in YouTube.
But
but the rate don't have to change, necessarily change. I mean, no, the rate doesn't change with the population size unless the change is dramatic.
Right, yes.
So that's something that is not necessarily correct.
Okay, well, I need to discuss this. Okay.
Okay, since I see that there are no questions on the end theory data, probably the audience takes for granted the end theory, and I think we can finish here and continue discussion with coffee. And thanks.
I'm not the only one.